Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. So, this one really piqued my curiosity. It's all about, well, letting go.
Definitely resonates with the times, doesn't it?
Big time. We're diving into Morgan Day Cecil's YouTube video, the one she titled Mature Feminine Energy 10 Things I Got Rid of to Reset My Life. And just to be upfront, this isn't going to be us rattling off a listicle or anything. We're going deeper. Like, what's the real takeaway from Morgan's personal experience?
Exactly. How can we glean something meaningful for ourselves from the changes she made?
Hmm.
And I think specifically for our audience who are all about maximizing their time, how do we pull out those aha moments without wading through everything?
Absolutely. We're all about efficiency here. So get ready to explore some pretty big shifts from everyday habits to relationships, even how she sees herself, and some massive life choices. We're talking like real life turning points.
It's fascinating how these personal choices, right, they end up reflecting themes that so many of us grapple with.
Right.
I mean, who hasn't struggled with a habit that's not doing them any favors or questioned who they are at some point?
Totally. So let's jump in. Morgan talks about something that really surprised me: smoking. Apparently, during a super stressful move to Spain, late 2023, she and her husband, sort of on a whim, decided to take up smoking again. They called it novelty.
Almost like a little rebellion in the midst of chaos.
And you won't believe this, but by June 2024, she's saying it's a full-blown daily habit.
It's interesting how often our emotional state can completely override what we intellectually know. The novelty, like you said, in doing it together probably created this sense of comfort during a crazy time. Makes you wonder if, sometimes, even those bad habits are just trying to fulfill some deeper emotional need.
Makes sense. Beyond just that shared moment, what do you think she was looking for? And what does that tell us about why breaking habits is so hard?
It wasn't about the cigarette itself, right? More like carving out a moment of connection when everything else felt out of control.
But she's honest about how it quickly became something else entirely, like an actual craving, not just a fun thing.
That's the slippery slope of habits turning into addiction. It's that cycle of a fleeting high, then the guilt and the physical effects creeping in. It's like our brains get wired to chase that quick fix even when we know it's bad for us.
It was really eye-opening when she talked about lighting up becoming the best part of her day. Like, that's a wake-up call if I've ever heard one.
A huge red flag that things need to change. The good news is she and her husband made a pact to quit after about 6 months. Oh, and she's totally against vaping too.
That shared commitment is so powerful. And being firm about vaping shows she really gets the dangers. It's about that overall well-being, not just ditching one bad habit.
100%.
Now, moving on to another substance. Her relationship with alcohol is, how do I put it, more complex. She talks about really enjoying the taste of wine, the whole experience of it. That initial buzz, it's kind of a nice picture she paints, don't you think?
Yeah, it's how a lot of people see alcohol. There's a real enjoyment there, maybe a social aspect too. But the part where she talks about the negative impact even moderate drinking had on her thinking, that's important. She realized it was making her, well, less sharp.
She's very aware of those subtle changes. Even one or two drinks regularly, she said it made a difference in how she felt. When she thought back to times she felt her absolute best, being sober was a big part of that.
It's interesting how she links even a small amount of alcohol to feeling less connected to herself, like less vibrant.
Right, like it was dimming her inner light in a way.
And it reminds us of how even moderate drinking can impact our energy, our mood, even how present we feel in our lives. That decision she made towards the end of 2024 to skip that regular glass of wine, it was about choosing positivity and that connection with herself.
Totally aligns with that whole mindful living trend.
For sure.
Okay, let's completely shift gears. She talks about making this big decision to cut out mainstream media, the news, said it was fueling anxiety, fear, just this feeling like the world was ending. Don't we all feel that sometimes?
Absolutely. It's like a fire hose of negativity. She's smart to connect that to her nervous system and overall well-being.
Mhm.
If you're constantly bombarded with fear, your body reacts as if you're in danger. It's hard to grow and connect in that state.
It's like she's intentionally creating a calmer space inside herself.
Exactly.
And get this, she didn't just cut it out. She actively sought out alternative sources.
Yeah.
Longer podcasts, those in-depth interviews, Substack articles, all that stuff. She actually talks about feeling more hopeful and like she has more control, even with, well, some interesting things happening in the world, like Trump becoming president again in 2025.
Important to remember she's just describing her own experience, not making a political statement.
Right. But it shows how we can actively curate the information we consume. The fact that she felt less polarized and could think more critically after making this shift, that's huge.
It really is. It reminds us we have the power to shape how we see the world by being mindful of what we let into our minds.
Now, let's talk about how she redefined her identity, and she starts with something pretty visible, ditching the blonde hair. At first, it was practical, years of dye and extensions had damaged her hair, but it became about something way deeper, like letting go of an old version of herself.
Hair can be so symbolic. It
Yeah.
often represents different phases of our lives or how we see ourselves. It's fascinating how she called long blonde hair a cheat code for femininity. Like she recognizes the cultural associations.
But she's quick to point out that being feminine isn't about hair color.
It's way more than that.
That act of cutting and dyeing her hair, she actually used the word release, like she was shedding something, a physical representation of a change inside.
Powerful stuff.
Then she talks about her experience with Botox. She starts casually with a Groupon, then becomes a regular, and eventually takes a break when she moves to Spain and doesn't have a doctor she trusts. She even mentions the cost and that feeling of being dependent on it, which I think a lot of people who've tried it can relate to.
The financial aspect and that potential for dependence are definitely things to consider. What I found interesting was her observation that Botox actually helped her resting worry face and even her tendency to feel melancholy. It shows how connected our physical appearance and our emotions really are.
Right. It makes you think about all the subtle ways our physical selves influence how we feel.
Like it's this whole mind-body feedback loop.
But she's also super clear that Botox is a personal choice. It shouldn't be out of fear or pressure, but about feeling good in your own skin.
Self-care, no matter what it looks like, should always be about feeling authentic.
Agreed.
Totally.
In this week's episode of the Deep Dive podcast, we're diving into a video by Morgan Day Cecil, one of our beloved Inner Bloom coaches. If you've ever felt like you're hiding your light, overthinking your every move, or playing small because it just feels safe, her course, Heal Your Fear of Being Seen, is for you. Morgan's unique feminine wholeness method is much more than a practice. It's a coming home to your most radiant, unapologetic self. It's a soft yet strong guide from self-doubt to self-expression, from feeling invisible to standing in your truth with love and confidence. Are you ready to rewrite your story? Are you ready to stop hiding and start blooming? Join Inner Bloom today and get instant access to this course and so many more. We have over 100 hours of healing, empowerment, and sisterhood waiting for you inside. And the best part, you can get lifetime access today for just $97. The link to learn more is in the description box. Because you were never meant to shrink, you were born to bloom.
Okay, on to relationships. She gets real about stepping back from one-sided friendships. You know that feeling, right? When you're putting in more effort than you're getting back?
Ugh. Yeah, it's tough, but sometimes it's got to happen. She quotes, and I think this might actually be AI generated, Alan Watts. He talks about a woman with fierce integrity, kindness, but with boundaries, and the self-respect to walk away when she's not valued. It's about recognizing your own worth.
I love that. And I love how she didn't make a big deal out of it. She talks about letting it be not burning bridges, but prioritizing her own needs. It leaves room for things to maybe change down the line.
It's a mature way to handle it, and it shows she values those relationships, but not at the expense of herself.
Okay. One of the biggest changes she talks about is letting go of being the primary breadwinner. For 5 years, she was the boss babe, but she says it started to feel wrong. It was impacting her marriage and her own well-being. That's a huge shift in a family dynamic.
It really is, especially in a society that puts so much emphasis on career success and money. The fact that she was willing to step back and support her husband's coaching career, that speaks volumes about their partnership and her changing priorities.
She says it had a ripple effect, too. Like, their marriage is stronger, his career is flourishing, and she has more time for personal growth. She even mentions a Psychology Today stat about how sometimes traditional roles can lead to more intimacy and shared responsibility. But she emphasizes that it's all about individual happiness within those roles.
It's not one size fits all, right? It's about finding what works.
Exactly. And she makes it clear this was her own choice. No outside pressure. In fact, she felt more pressure to be that boss babe. She calls it a decision driven by her soul, not her ego or fear.
That's such a powerful way to frame it. It's about inner alignment, not what other people think.
Another biggie, Social media. After 10 years on Instagram, which had been such a huge part of her life, she felt like the fun was gone. It became this burden. I think a lot of us who've been on social media for a while can relate.
It's that shift from something exciting and new to a source of stress and comparison. She actually calls it feeding a beast, like it's never satisfied.
She mentions doing digital detoxes before, but this 6-month break feels different. She says it's more like growing apart naturally. It's interesting how even our relationships with technology can evolve.
Like, it's okay to change how you interact with things, even online.
The freedom she describes from the constant scrolling and comparison, the sheer amount of stuff, it's a reminder that we can reclaim our mental space. And she specifically addresses the listener, you listening right now, and reminds you that you have the power to define your own relationship with social media.
Love that. We're not stuck. We can choose how we engage.
Finally, she talks about letting go in a very literal sense. She embraces change by moving to Europe, a lifelong dream, right? Leaving the US with just 2 suitcases, that takes guts.
Major leap of faith. But she talks about how love was the driving force, risking it all for her relationship and this shared dream and the positive outcomes. Inspiring.
She encourages us to trust our gut and take those risks, even when it means leaving behind what's comfortable.
It's about stepping outside of that comfort zone, embracing the unknown. That's where real growth happens.
She sums up her experience by saying 2024 was all about breaking down the walls around her heart, those walls built of habit, fear, old versions of herself. And then, she quotes Rumi, "You don't need to seek to find love. What you need to do is search and find all the barriers you have built against it."
That's the heart of it, isn't it? Letting go is about clearing the path for all the good stuff, especially love, in every sense of the word.
Love for ourselves, others, life. She ties it all back to feminine energy, and she directly asks the listener, that's you again, to think about what their body and soul might be ready to let go of, to make room for more love, connection, joy. It's powerful.
It makes you look inward and examine those things that might be holding you back.
The last thing she mentions letting go of, at least for now, is creating YouTube content. She wants to really process everything and come back in 2025 with even more to share. Her final message: whatever lights you up, whatever is lighting you up right now, including the things that you're lit up to let go of, trust it.
Trust your gut, even when it tells you to let go of something familiar.
So as we wrap up, we want to leave you with this. What walls are you building in your life? What's one small step, or maybe a big one, that you could take to start trusting what lights you up? Maybe it's letting go of something that doesn't serve you anymore. What could that transformation look like for you? What amazing things might be waiting on the other side?
Lots to ponder.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time.
See ya.